Okay, guys, it's been a disastrous week for the Biden administration, and it wasn't just a garage gate. You had the FAA grounding all flights because the Department of Transportation didn't think to update like an almost 75-year-old system. But you know what they did have time for? This is the stuff I mentioned earlier in the week that I said I would going into. They had time to make sure that racial equity, inclusion, income inequality, environmental justice, and climate change were part of the DOT and FAA's focus in the 2023 budget. So if you're surprised that the FAA systems went down this week, grounding all domestic flights, you shouldn't be, because it's clear where their priorities are. Remember, guys, there are no underserved communities when no one is served. That was a line I read on Twitter, and they're 100% right. That's Washington think, okay? You know what else they focused on? The NOTAM system. As a pilot, I know a little bit about it, but the Notice to Airmen. That's the acronym, what NOTAM stands for. So in recent times, the FAA changed that. December of 2021 to Notice to Air Missions. Not a Notice to Airmen, not something that's been around for a while that every pilot knows about. So as not to offend, we have to make it air missions because airmen implies just men and apparently not women. This is what they're focused on. So this is their priority. Pro tip, 0 women in aviation were likely offended by NOTAM, okay? It's an acronym. No one cares. It's hard to believe, okay? But again, remember, folks, we can't update these systems. We can ground domestic flights, but you know what we can't do? We can't fix that because we're so busy sending $130 billion to the Ukraine, okay? That's what's going on. These people aren't serious. And I point these things out and they say, Pete Buttigieg is credibly qualified because he has a bunch of academic degrees. I go, well, what does that have to do? Is he a pilot? Does he understand anything about the FAA? Does he understand anything about transportation? Because all I know is that he's overseen disasters from a supply chain crisis. Okay. Then he was conveniently on paternity leave for, because only 350 million Americans depended on him. Like, God forbid, maybe you show up anyway, to the borderline train strike and the disaster that went on with that for weeks during a supply chain crisis. Now the FAA, and that's what happens when you get qualified candidates and they're overlooked because you put in someone with academic credentials that checks off a bunch of woke boxes because he happens to be gay and no one cares. Okay, that's the problem. That's the problem, folks. And that's where we are, and that's why it continues. Have a good one.